Hello and welcome to the Metapod, the Pokemon TCG podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. We're back. We're ready for action. Sean, how have you been?
I've been good. It's been 2 weeks for me. You had the solo cast 2 weeks ago, and then we both took last week off because of scheduling conflicts and things. But I am good. I am, as I tweeted out yesterday, Jake and I briefly chatted about this before recording. But yeah, I'm a little sad that I have to sort of go back into lockdown mode here in New York. It's dicey out there. I think the card game community in particular, for those of you who don't follow the Omicron variant news that closely, Anime NYC was like a big, I don't know, spreader event or whatever for the new variant. And the anime and card game communities are pretty intertwined. So there's been lots of cases popping up at game stores where it's like, oh, at this, event, if you attended, like somebody there tested positive for COVID, so go get tested. And that's happened like 3 or 4 different places in the last 2 weeks. So I'm like, yeah, no, I can't go to any more card game shops for at least another month or so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you. I just started a part-time job as well, selling books. And so I've almost thought about just like not going to League on some days because I just I get off and I'm like, man, I am so tired because I've never worked retail before. Now I'm working retail and it's tough. I mean, it's not been bad. It's been great, but like, whew, that's a different kind of like energy.
Yeah. Are you on your feet all day, Jake?
I am on my feet all day. And as someone who has previously fractured their spine, it's been very tough to be on my feet all day.
Yeah. I mean, as somebody who did work retail for and worked in a restaurant too, but just find some comfortable shoes. That's all you can do.
Yeah, I mean, I have comfortable shoes. It's just been like ever since I fractured my spine, I've been like a rock.
Yeah.
Basically, I don't work out really anymore, and so my body is just like not used to being up like that all the time. I mean, even though I was a former like college student athlete working out 100 hours a week, that time that I spent vegging and getting into anime.
Also, I mean, just standing, depending on what your job is, but standing up for that long usually. Even if you're like an athlete, like I was fit when I had that job that I stood up all day, but like sometimes you just stand and if you don't really move a lot while you're standing, it's really weird. It's like a very different issue. So
yeah, it's definitely something, but there's been a lot of things that have been happening in Pokemon, Sean, the last 2 weeks since we've had our last podcast episode. But you know what keeps coming in? The gift that keeps on giving, Sean?
What is that, Jake?
The 5-star reviews that our lovely listeners leave on Apple Podcasts. Now, whether you're listening on YouTube, where you can find the video version of the podcast, whether you're on Apple Podcasts or wherever you can leave reviews, make sure to please leave us a review, whether it's 5 stars or 1 star, whatever you feel about the podcast. So then we can read it off, we can get feedback on what we could do better, etc., because Sean and I are in it for the long haul. We've been doing this for a while now. What is this, episode 76?
Oh, Lordy. I think so. It's almost like we're going to be coming up in another 3 months on our 2-year, Jake. Something like that.
Yeah, our 2-year anniversary. Sean and I will be together for 2 years. That's a big deal. But it's what?
I was going to say, what do you get for the 2-year anniversary? You got to start looking up the...
Yeah, we gotta start thinking of ideas. My goodness. But this 5-star review comes from Pokey Dad Drew, another wonderful friend of ours, another Pokey podcaster from Pokey Dad's TCG. Love from pod to pod. 5-star review. Just realized I've been listening this long without leaving a review. That's on me. Heck yeah, that's on you. What have you been doing? I'm just kidding. That's a joke. Y'all are cool dudes, very knowledgeable, and I enjoy your insight on cards and the game in general. Keep doing you and banging out the great content. And P.S., Jake, what are your thoughts on the Overly Cautious Hero, which is an anime? And to be honest, I have not heard of this until right now. Cautious Hero, the hero is overpowered but overly cautious. It's a comedy, which is very interesting. It seems like your kind of typical isekai where person is sent to another world and they're vastly overpowered and they just get stuff done. But it's comedic, so You know what? I might try to pick it up here soon. It does have an anime series, and I think I saw that season 2 was announced recently, or maybe is coming. Oh no, it's yet to receive a season 2. So I guess you're just gonna have to wait. But Sean, have you ever heard of this anime?
No, I am not. I'm not deep in the world of anime. My anime is probably for most big, like a proper anime and manga fan. My anime is very surface level. You know, you got that Naruto, you got that Dragon Ball franchise.
There's no issues with that, Sean.
No
Anime
issues.
fans are all over the place. You know, whatever you enjoy, that's what it is with anime, in my opinion. But you know, I mentioned, you know, leaving us a review wherever you are, YouTube in the comments, Apple Podcasts in their reviews. But one that I want to talk about real quick is a big thanks to our Spotify listeners. A lot of people from Spotify tell us, whether that's in YouTube or Twitter DMs or something, that they're from Spotify, so they can't leave a review, but they want to tell us how great the podcast is. And we've read a couple of those reviews here on the podcast. But for those of you that don't know, a couple weeks ago, Spotify did their Wrapped Up series. So basically, if you were a podcaster, I guess even music artists get these as well, probably. They basically give you stats of like listenership and growth and stuff for the content that you put out in the past year. So in 2021, I just want to rattle off a couple quick facts from our Spotify Wrapped as thanks to you all. So, Sean, can you guess, without looking at the cheat sheet of the notes that we provided, how many countries the Metapod was played in?
I mean, I literally just looked at it. But you know what? If I had to guess without knowing, there's a little over 200 countries in the world. And we have not, I'm almost positive that not all of those countries even have a Spotify. So, you know, if people are listening to us in English speaking, like between 20 and 30 countries, I would be happy with that. Because English is also, you know, that's the pre-requirement too. You have to speak English. So, Jake, enlighten me.
In 39 episodes were played in 43 different countries. Sean, that's almost like a fourth of the world.
Yeah, a fourth of the world's countries.
Have we hit Antarctica, though, is the real question. That's what I want to know.
You know, one of my favorite pods, they haven't uploaded in years, but they used to have like listeners take a picture of themselves listening to the podcast in the most unusual places. So, like, if you guys out there want to, like, I'll steal ideas from other podcasts. Tweet at us at the most ridiculous places that you are listening to the Metapod. If it's contrived, I suppose that's okay. That's fine, too. Do it for the memes. But if you do have, like, a weird thing where you listen to us, like, while you're flying a fighter jet, I don't know.
That's pretty impressive.
If there's anyone going to space, I doubt this very much. But if there's any billionaires going to space on one of Mr. Musk's future trips and wants to listen to the pod, tweet at us. But yeah, so Antarctica would be one of those places where it's like, if you're going to Antarctica and you listen to the pod, like that's some footage right there.
If you want to tweet at us those pictures, that is at MetapodTCG on Twitter, or you could go to our email, metapodtcg@gmail.com. You can send over a picture. We'll show it on screen, the whole shebang and things like that. But we had huge increases, Sean, from the previous year. We grew 903% increase in streams. That's 903%.
It's a lot.
That's a big number. Yeah. You know what's also a big number? 693% increase in listeners. So people joining the pod, listening in, tuning in for their first time. Absolutely incredible. And then 578% increase in followers as well. People listening to Tweedledee and Tweedledum and thinking, you know what? Maybe I want to stay for a second episode. But you know the best part, Sean?
What, Jake?
The best part is that 168 fans made us their top podcast of 2021. We got many pictures over on Twitter and stuff about the screenshots from people's like Spotify year in reviews about how they listened to the Metapod as their top 5 podcasts, and we retweeted them and said thank you and things like that. But 168 people said we were the top dog, Sean. And cheers to you. I don't know if you have coffee today.
I don't. I have a ginger ale. I've already had my coffee. We are recording in the morning. I should have my coffee, but I don't.
Yeah, we're recording in the morning because at this time tomorrow, I will have been awake for about 6 hours.
Oh, Lordy.
On a plane.
But Jake, I'll let you do the ad read here, but like we have to monetize all of this success from 2021.
Yes.
Right?
Because we're growing so at an extremely rapid rate, and if you want to support the Metapod as well, you could go over to Manscaped, who's the best below-the-waist grooming champions of the world. Sean, Manscaped offers precise engineered tools for your family jewels and secret rares. Manscaped just launched their 4th generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, 4.0. There's been many iterations of the lawnmower, and Sean, we've got access to the 4.0 as well. Join over 4 million people worldwide who trust Manscaped with the exclusive offer for you, 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code METAPOD at Manscaped. There's no space, all one word, just like the Pokemon, so you probably know how to spell it. Easy enough, Sean, but it's been excellent. Sean, do you know charging? You got your cord in your headset over there. You know how cords sometimes can be a bit of a struggle at times if you're watching the video version of the pod. Did you know that the Lawnmower 4.0 has wireless charging to it, so you don't have those struggles of the plug in and accidentally getting unplugged, or maybe you're going to charge it and you don't plug it in all the way, and then all of a sudden you're going to shave another time, and then all of a sudden, oh no, it doesn't work because I didn't have it plugged in all the way. The new wireless charging system uses electromagnetic induction, which helps your battery length last longer. So Sean, not only is it wireless charging, but your batteries are even longer than before. Isn't that truly incredible?
Absolute technology, the wonders of the Industrial Revolution. I thought of one pun while you were doing the ad read that I just really want to say.
All right.
And it is, with Manscaped, you can be the very best and not the hairy best.
There we go.
I'll see myself out.
That is something that they'll never sing in the Pokemon theme song. I guarantee that it won't. But we will definitely sing it on this pod. I mean, we got the product of the 4.0, and personally, I was blown away by the performance. I love it. Good craftsmanship, good detail. Gives me a bunch of different guard lengths of sizes 1 to 4 in terms of the trimmer, which allows a little bit of customization depending on who you are, what you prefer, yada, 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 yada. And it's incredible, Sean, I feel like. But anyway, Sean, if you or anybody else for the holiday season, maybe some last second gifts, or maybe you've got a family Christmas after the Christmas day that maybe you want to give something to, get 20% off and free shipping with the code METAPOD at manscaped.com. 20% off with free shipping, manscaped.com. Use Metapod. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. And Sean, that's enough of the business. It's time to talk. Well, actually, we could talk more about business because, the most valuable Victini card that was ever printed was given out in Japan, Sean. Incredible. Been selling for $1,300 USD. And you may be wondering, what the heck is a Victini card doing a new Victini card selling for $1,300? Sean, would you like to tell us about how you could make a bunch of money if you have this card?
I mean, so I think some players and collectors out there especially will be familiar with the idea of like error cards, right? And especially in Japanese, I will say it's much more rare to find error cards for Japanese, because the Japanese typically, especially like print errors, you don't usually find that. The quality has been much higher. But even in English, like the errors will usually be very minor things, right? Like red cheeks Pikachu. It's a Pikachu, but it has red cheeks. Or it'll be like, I think there's a
there's a Diglett with the fighting energy is like sideways on one of its attacks.
Like a famous one, Blaine's Charizard has fighting instead of fire energy as one of like the symbols. And so technically on that one, the most printed version is actually the error. And if you have the correct one, that's the rare one. But they're usually like minor details. But this one is actually a pretty big deal. It seems like somebody just sent the wrong artwork to the printer. So for those of you who may know this, there's two different types of, there's two different Victinis, right? There is the Victini V from Battle Styles, and then there is the promo card, right? And when they wanted to do in Japan some sort of a Victini that had a stamp, let me see here if I can pull this up.
The Championship Series.
Yes. So both of the Victinis have different sets of attacks and different artworks to go with it. It looks like what happened was they printed the good attack. I think this is the good Victini, right?
No, this is the bad
one. Okay.
So the art is the good Victini, but the attacks are the bad Victini.
So it seems like at some point they accidentally printed the wrong attacks with the artwork or vice versa and gave these out. Now, the number of these that were created, I don't know exactly how many. I think they said there's two. There are currently two unique Victini. Okay, sorry. I don't know how many of these exist, though.
So it's a little bit hard to tell because this is an error card. So during the championship series, junior players who win at least 4 games in this championship series, and seniors and masters who win at least 5 get copies of this card. So it wasn't like they had a set amount ready to be printed. These are more of like prizes and stuff based on how many wins you get. So it's a little bit hard to tell with us how many there are, but it is very, I mean, it's few, right? It's not like they printed this in products and
no, it's a promo.
Like that.
It's a promo card, and it wasn't a promo that you gave out like with like a purchase at 7-Eleven or something, which they have done before. This is like, you have to go to an event type thing. So I think this will probably be one of the, depending on how many of these end up actually existing, this will probably be one of the more famous error cards long term because it is just so, the error is so large, right? It's like entirely like the artwork and attacks don't match. Like it's not like a little print error where it's like, oops, there's a smudge here, like, because even some of the English cards, like sometimes you'll get cards where it's like, oh, they accidentally like printed the foil on top of a little bit of the text. And I'm like, don't get me wrong, it's technically an error card. But from my purpose as like a collector, those are the kind of errors where it's like, it's errors of the Industrial Revolution. It's like, it's a process error, right? I'm like, that's not interesting to me, but this is interesting.
This has happened before, but it happened in English. Wizards of the Coast printed some electrodes. So back in base set Jungle, some of the first sets of Pokemon, they actually did a quick flip-flop of the base set and Jungle Electrode. It had the base set illustration on it with the jungle attacks and the jungle stamp as well, and the information, the HP and things like that alongside it. So that was like one of the only times that really there has been an error like this. So it's been like 20 years.
Yeah.
Sean. So one of every 20. Do you think you could maybe, do you think you could get this Victini card, Sean?
Do I think I could? I mean,
if snag it?
If one had the money and inclination, sure. It's selling on auction websites for around $1,300. I think if you are a serious collector, I don't know how many of these were printed. My gut says, though, that if they print more, they're going to correct the error for sure. So
they are sending correct versions over to players via mail.
Okay, yeah. So that to me suggests that there will be a very small amount of these relative to, especially the Electrode version. I don't know how many times the Electrode version was printed. It may have just been the first edition stamped one, but first edition Jungle, there was a lot of those printed, to be frank. So I feel like that one there may be more copies of. So if you're into collecting, and especially Japanese cards, who they tend to hold their value over time a little bit better. They don't have the skyrocketing prices usually as some of the American cards, but they're very stable from an investment, from a collector perspective. Yeah, I'd say now is the time to pick it up when it's new. If you wanted to maybe wait a couple of weeks, the price will probably come down a little, but long term, I think this is a great card to buy if you're a collector, because it's like, there's only 2 examples of this type of error in the history of the TCG.
I don't usually like to talk about like investing in Pokemon cards and like, like you can make thousands of dollars buying this card. I just want to know though, like what the price of the PSA 10 is going to be. Like that's got to be not only like a super low count, but like you're saying, like this card itself isn't printed that much. So like, I really want to know what the PSA 10 is going to go for. I'm so curious about it.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if one of these came back a PSA 10, if it's going for between $5,000 and $10,000.
That's insane.
I mean, it'll really depend on how many of these exist. Like, if they sent out 10,000 of these, then obviously not. Then this is like a hype price. But if they only printed a few hundred of these, easily. So, yeah.
You know what they are going to print a lot more of, Sean? Special sets in the Pokemon trading card game. And you know what? We're going to be getting a new special set, not just a regular set like Battle Styles or Chilling Reign. I'm talking special sets like V Max Climax, Shiny Star V, Hidden Fates. We're getting another one, Sean, coming out in June, on June 17th in 2022, labeled as a special set right now, Sword and Shield 10.5, the 0.5 being the new set. And it'll have the same as usual with the special sets, your ETBs, tins, collection boxes of all sorts and more. No booster boxes alongside this set, again, being a special set. And there's going to be a new type of product that comes around with this. Team Up Collections. Very interesting. We don't know much about it, but Team Up Collections we've just seen in VMAX Climax that we've talked about a couple times on this podcast as the cards get announced. Trainers with their Pokemon. A lot of people, especially on Poke Beach, speculating that this may be the character rares coming in and things like that from VMAX Climax. They're already coming into Brilliant Star as well when that set comes out in, what is it, January or February?
Sorry, which one?
The Brilliant Star set.
February.
Is that January or February?
February.
I always forget what it is because I feel like there was a point where we got like a month backwards.
It may have been this last year because of Shining Fates, I think, like messed up the schedule this year. But yeah.
We know that VMAX Climax has been a super, super hot set with the character rares, and we know that even more character rares are coming in February in Japan through their set Battle Legion with more and more character rares. So it's going to be crazy. I mean, Generations back in 2016 was a really good set. Shining Fates this past February was a really good set. Hidden Fates is a very, very good set. Celebrations from this fall, very, very cool set as well. They just keep coming and coming, Sean.
I will say there's one set you didn't mention, which is, to be frank, not a good set. Champion's Path.
Oh, yeah. Champion's Path is garbage. It's literally Charizard. That's about it.
Oh, Charizard Path.
But it's that thing, Sean, of like collections, it's so hard to keep up with all this. I feel like just new stuff is coming and coming always. And
yeah,
if you're a collector and you struggle with keeping up because of money, like, man, I really feel you right now.
Get a better job, scrubs. No, that's what Pokemon is telling people.
Wow.
That's honestly
have me starting a new part-time job because I haven't been able to find a full-time job in 8 months. I see how it is, Sean.
No, I think though that this is, it feels a little bit like what Pokemon says with like all of the sets that seem to be releasing special sets. I think it's just the overload from specifically 2021 because we had 2 special sets that year in Celebrations and Shining Fates because it was the 25th anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
It is interesting to me. This is something that PokeBeach, who we're on here, points out. And, for those of you who've been, buying cards from Pokemon for a while, the special set usually releases in like October. And the fact that this is releasing in June, it's a little bit like, weird. That's I'm not quite sure why they're doing that. My gut actually is telling me, Jake, that they may be pushing the special sets to the summer. If this happens the next year after that, because they want these special set cards to be playable in standard before they rotate. Because if you actually look at a lot of the cards, there's like the Crobat is going to rotate. As far as we know, Marnie is going to rotate. I think, let's see, what's the...
Well, this full art Marnie down here that we'll talk about a little bit later has the F regulation mark. Oh, no, that's the new Marnie. I'm sorry. Never mind. Forget what I just said.
Uh-oh.
That's the Marnie's, like, conviction or whatever. Anyways, we'll talk about that card later.
But, like, a lot of the cards in the set are going to rotate. So this is the problem that they had with Hidden Fates, especially, is by the time Hidden Fates came out, a lot of the GXs, because we're like a year behind Japan in some of those special sets, had rotated. So, it may simply be that Pokemon is realizing that people want to play with these very special cards in standard and being like, okay, let's try to release these sets earlier. That would make sense to me. If it's purely like hey, we want players to be excited about this, not just collectors. So like, let's meet them in the middle, release it in June, and that'll give people about two months to get the cards, put them in their standard decks, and have super fancy versions of standard decks. And I'm like, I'm all for that. There may be
for that too if we can be in a position to actually be able to play.
Oh yeah, I mean
you were just talking about with like Anime NYC and stuff, and I mean, I have little hope of humanity at this point.
But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how this goes. I mean, Jake, I want to know your thoughts because you know that I've been getting much more into Magic lately.
Mm-hmm.
And especially I've been opening up collector boosters. So I want to know what you think about Pokemon if they would ever transition from these special sets to something like collector boosters, which for those of you who don't know, collector boosters are very expensive boxes of whatever the set that it's referring to is. So like, imagine Brilliant Stars came out, you buy a normal box, and then there's a box that is primarily aimed at collectors that is like 3 times the price. But what you get in it is every card is like special in some way. Either like it's foil, or you can get certain alternate arts only in that set, or whatever. Like, I wonder, especially with Pokemon being a much bigger set for collectors than Magic really is. I think there are far more collectors for Pokemon in general than there are relative to Magic collectors and players. I just wonder if that would be a product that Pokemon would ever consider. I don't know. What do you think, Jake? Do you think that's a good idea with all the new special sets coming out constantly?
I think it would be an all right idea because a lot of times when you open up Pokemon product, I mean, we look at Fusion Strike. Fusion Strike is way too big of a set, right? Imagine if instead of, let's say, alternate arts, right? In Fusion Strike, you instead got them in these like collector's boxes. I mean, actually, I don't even know if that would be a good idea because then you have even more opportunities to get like duds. I don't know. Maybe you get like better hit rates with like the regular Vs in exchange with it. So you have more opportunities to get more hits, and you're not like your secret rares are.
Yeah, I get your point. Like it's a tough one because like, what do you take out of the regular, or do you just increase the pull rates? But then if people are pulling more of them, they're not worth as much. I don't know. I
know that I would never be able to find like these collectors things because they're going to come off the shelves literally immediately. And then the resale market the price is going to be like 8 times over like retail price. in like
Yeah.
card shops and stuff. I mean, how do card shops like sell usually in terms of the retail price or MSRP with the Magic stuff?
Well, Magic is not as big of a collector thing. So usually you can get them, like these boxes are like $200 roughly for normal sets. And then a regular box that you would buy is maybe 100. So it's about double the price. And you can just walk into a store and buy them for the most part. Only every now and again are there sets that like it's actually much more expensive. There are a couple of sets that it's like $300, $400 maybe for one of those boxes. But yeah, I mean, Pokemon, the fact that regular boxes for certain Pokemon sets have been $140 plus, like if these collector boxes, man, were like, even if they're only 12 packs or 18 packs, but I could, you know, they might start getting into stupid territory, like $600 or $700 a box, which I'm like, I don't know then.
Yeah, I mean, Pokemon already has a problem with scalping, and so like I just think that it would make everything worse, to be honest. Although it'd be cool, like to get a box that you can guarantee like secret rares or ultra rares in every single pack. Like, that would be cool, but I would never be able to open one.
I don't know. I see Pokemon slowly copying a bit of what Magic does in terms of their product, especially outside of Japan. And it's a product that, like, I think there's a market for it. And I don't think people would be too upset if more alternate arts were overall printed and distributed too, because like players, collectors, like a lot of people want the card just to have the card, even if it doesn't immediately have like, if you just printed more of them, there'd be less of a scalper market, right? And so I think that would bring a little bit of that collector box price down. And it would be, I don't know, the problem I've had with Pokemon lately, this is just me ranting, is like, to your point about Fusion Strike, you open a box and like, it's not exciting half the time. Cause like, you're not, most of the time, like you might pull one card that you're like, this card is awesome out of a whole box. And like, I've started opening Magic stuff, not because I want to make money, but because I'm like, every pack is exciting, you know? And that's like the thing that I don't get from Pokemon anymore, where I'm like, I don't know, maybe a product like that would get certain people to buy sealed product again. I don't know how many people like me exist, but I don't know.
It's an interesting idea because, you know, like most of us that listen to the pod, we just like the cards, you know, and we're not here to make millions of dollars or, you know, a lot of people here don't even play the game. They're here for the product news, you know, like what's coming out, what's the newest cool card, things like that. So it's an interesting concept. But Sean, you want to talk about secret rares? Let me tell you all about Start Deck 100. Now, we've talked about Start Deck 100 before, Sean, on this podcast. For those of you that don't know, Start Deck 100 is a series in Japan where basically you get like packs, but they're pre-constructed decks. You buy a pack, you open it up, and you get the Rayquaza V Max starter deck, basically. And then we were talking about how this is like a super cool concept. You know, it would be really, really cool to do this as like side events, you know, do like a pre-release style, but use these packs or use these start decks instead. But in my opinion, Sean, it's started to go a little bit downhill. As it's been revealed, there are secret rares that you can pull in these Start Deck 100s. And there are some popular ones that are going to be in here, including Pikachu V. There's a full art. Marnie's Pride. That's the card that I was alluding to earlier.
Yes.
That has a full art. Marnie, as we know, very, very expensive full art. You know, a lot of people love that card. And then gold versions of the Bird Trio, Moltres, Zapdos, and Galarian Articuno. But that's not all, Sean. There is going to be a secret 101st deck. And you know the cool thing about this, Sean? I say cool as in sarcastically because I honestly hate this. This deck is all like max rarity pretty much. You get the 3 gold cards of the birds in this deck that I mentioned, the Moltres, Zapdos, and Articuno. You get the Marnie full art, you get the Berry full art, and then every single card in the deck the rest of the way is reverse holo. No regular cards, all kind of like secret-ish looking cards, and I kind of hate it, Sean.
Why? This is so cool.
I kind of hate it because, like, I looked, like, when I saw these Star Deck 100s, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Only people that play the game or want to learn how to play the game are going to pick these up, and it's going to be great. But now we have a situation where it's just like a booster box where you can get secret rares, where you can get a god deck, essentially. You know, we talk about god pack sometime in Japan. And I mean, and now it's just bringing an influx of people that it's just going to buy these up to try to get that 101st deck. And I mean, that's less people that are going to be buying it to learn how to play with their friends, you know, things like that.
I get your point is basically like you want it to be an accessible product for casual play. Right.
And I don't live in Japan, so like I don't know if these like flew off the shelves like crazy, or if you can even get these, or if these are boosted up in price by the hundreds of yen, you know, by secondhand sellers at card shops or whatever. But like, I just wanted this to be pure, and now it feels tainted.
I mean, I guess. Would you have been happy if there wasn't a 101st deck? Like, if every now and again you might find one of these, like one secret rare in a pack, I think that is enough to like make the person who opens it happy, but it's not enough value for people to be buying these up to open them, right?
I agree.
Yeah. And I guess the question then is like, if it turns out that the 101st start deck is like 1 in every 10,000, then maybe it's still not worth it, and these won't sell like hotcakes because like nobody opens up the special Japanese sets in volume looking for a god pack other than like YouTubers, right? Because like, you know, getting one of those god packs is so rare that like that's a wildly poor investment.
I mean, if you got the money, honey.
I mean, sure, but yeah, like I don't know. I do like the idea of it. Because it is a fun thing, right? Like, if you're just somebody opening this up because you just, like to your point, you want to have fun, maybe you'll play what's in the deck, maybe you just want to see what you get, and then all of a sudden everything is foil, like, that's a pretty fun experience. But I see your point about, you know, now all of a sudden it's just like a booster box where everyone is going crazy because, like, I want to pull the god deck, and then it becomes like an overinflated price.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know how it's selling right now in terms of yen on like card shops or Japanese websites or something, but I just like, man, it just like, it grinds my gears that I was so excited about this. And then they're like, oh yeah, you can get secret rares and you can get god pack or god decks in here. And I was like, it's just a booster, but it's exactly like a booster.
Yeah, I do like it. The fact that we haven't in the US I don't think we've heard of any of these products coming to the US anytime soon.
No.
That makes me sad.
Yeah, it makes me sad too, because I really want to see these again at like side events like regionals or worlds.
Can you imagine?
Or something, because I think that would be like really cool and actually like sell well.
Yeah, I think it would sell fantastically. Like if you were to have IRL events again, which, you know, knock on wood, but this is the perfect side event for IRL because let's be frank, draft, unless it's a cube draft in Pokemon is bad. It just is. And that's something that Pokemon can't get around because the mechanics of Pokemon require you to have certain evolution lines. So unless you're willing to play Mutant, which is okay, but kind of awkward, it just doesn't, Pokemon is not designed to work in draft. And pre-release is boring because most pre-release decks are samey. you know?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it when we talked about the news that pre-release kits were going to change with Brilliant Star. You know, we talked about how in pre-release kits, you know, you either pull a V and you win, or your deck just kind of clunk.
Yeah. But
and
like
these Star Deck 100s are pre-built decks that probably have some sort of fluidity and they like match well and man, I just
see, that would be I agree with you. I mean, yeah, if there's a company out there that wants to make decks and do this as a third party, I think they could also, like, I don't know, having it be official, I think is a bigger thing. So it may not work, but yeah, one can hope. One can learn Japanese.
Like, I've heard some people talk about how they could do this, like they could run a table during a regional or something and do this. And the hardest part would just be like knowing the cards, right?
Yeah.
Can't read Japanese.
Yeah, exactly.
Most people at these events probably can't either.
Yeah, and you may know what most of the cards do, but there's probably some random cards in here that either haven't come out yet or are obscure, and you're just kind of like, I don't really know what the attack on this, like, I'm going to open up this deck list here. I don't know exactly what the second attack or the first attack on this random, like a Landorus or something. I don't know what it does. Like, it's just in there. And so half of the time your play group is going to be there, like, Googling the card and like trying to figure out what it does. But I don't know. For a dedicated crew of people, though, if people don't mind that, maybe that's the kind of thing where, you know, vendors just stock the 100s and run their own side events with the Japanese cards, and you just accept it.
Just please give us good things. But they are, Sean. The Pokemon Company is going to be giving us some good things in the future. Cue in the recent news of some secret rares that have come out, Sean. We're going to talk about a couple of these cards. Let's first talk about Shaymin Vstar. Another V-Star, a new mechanic that is coming to the Pokemon trading card game in the next couple months. This is a grass 250 HP Pokemon evolving from Shaymin V. Grass and colorless, Revenge Burst, 120 plus damage. It does 40 damage more for each prize card your opponent has already taken. So 5 plus 40, 200 plus 120, 320 max damage for 2 energy.
Yeah.
Before you lose the game, Sean. Pretty cool, I would say.
Yeah, and I think I listened to Luke from Celios talk about this card. Even the V, right? The V, it's 60 plus 40 times. So even if they've taken 5 prizes, you could use the V for 2 energy and do, 260 damage just for the V. And that's huge, right? Like 260 is going to knock out an opposing Shaymin Vstar. So, there's an element of like, oh, I have to evolve it in order to get the best attack. But it's nice that they have put a 60 damage less version, essentially, on the non-evolving. So I think it makes this card wildly playable because you don't necessarily have to Evo in order to get an attack off that might win you the game, right?
And it'll be interesting as well because the ability on the V-Star, the Star Bloom. Didn't I say at one point that the V-Stars were going to have abilities?
Yeah, you were right.
As their
you were
big
absolutely
things?
right.
Yeah, I mean, Sean, I think I know what I'm talking about around here. But anyways, you may use this ability during your turn. Heal 120 damage from each of your grass Pokemon. So that is that V-Star ability. I don't know if it's necessarily that great. I mean, if you don't have any other V-Star big attacks or abilities to use, I mean, I guess it's fine. Right? Because, I mean, you can use it at any point and you can use it potentially. And, the card is good enough, where you're using Revenge Burst, whether that's on the V or the V Max, that it's going to do a lot of damage. So it's probably going to be played anyways.
Yeah, I think it's a nice inclusion. I think this card is actually built around is powerful around its attack rather than its ability. It does combo nicely, I will say, because if your opponent is trying to set up game on the following turn, and they've maybe done not enough damage to kill you, and they've taken 5 prizes or 4 prizes, whatever it might be, right? You can do that big attack. You can actually heal, because the nice thing about Vstar, if it's an ability, it doesn't take your attack, right? So you can do it and attack, which is very different from GX. I think that is one aspect that maybe is not talked about or considered quite as much, is that you could do both of these things on the same turn. And so you could put yourself out of lethal for your opponent going into their turn and set up your own, one turn win situation. So it's a nice swing if it's on the right turn. There are some people who've talked about, like, maybe with like Lumineon V Max, maybe this is really good. I don't actually know exactly where this goes per se, but certain archetypes like to do some setup damage. Urshifu, Rapid Strike being a great example of that. So yeah, will be interesting to see how this ability really factors in, if at all, right? Maybe you pair this with the Arceus that lets you go get 2 cards out of your deck at any time instead. I don't know. But yeah.
It'll be interesting, Sean, but scroll down to what I think made the most noise when it was announced. Lumineon V. 170 HP water Pokemon. Sean, I may be the only person that likes Lumineon as a Pokemon. A lot of people don't even know that Lumineon is a Pokemon, Sean, from Gen 4 with the ability Luminous Sign. When you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench during your turn, you may search your deck for a supporter card, reveal it, and put it in your hand. Then shuffle your deck. Sean, Tapu Lele's ability is back.
It is. One thing I did see a lot of people talking about, I think this is amazing that the ability is back. I think them reprinting this card and after printing Eldegoss, because I think when we saw Eldegoss, we did, I think a lot of people thought, oh, this is kind of like Tapu Lele, but discard. And
it's like Versus Seeker, but a Pokemon.
Yeah, but I think what people realize is, like, Versus Seeker as a Pokemon is terrible. Nobody plays it. Like, just straight up, nobody plays Eldegoss in their decks. And I think it's because giving your opponent a 2-prize target to get a supporter that has gone into your discard, whether it's because you used it or you had to trash it with research, is almost always a bad idea. Unless it wins you the game, it's almost always a bad idea. Whereas this, because it can be an early game out, or it can be an out to something in your deck that you have no other way of getting back, I think this is the Pokemon Company being like, okay, fine. Tapu Lele is clearly the... We tried Eldegoss, we tried the discard route. No. Tapu Lele needs to be back in the game. But people did say that the attack on this is what makes it much lesser than Tapu Lele.
I agree, because Tapu Lele, for double colorless, it was called Energy Drive, and you combine the amount of energy on both Pokemon, and then I think it was 20 times.
Yeah, I think it was 20.
I think it was, and I mean, that was in the format with double colorless energy, so you could very easily, if you didn't have anything going on, you could slap that Lele down, you can attach the DCE to it, and you could at least do some damage on the field, whereas Lumineon is water colorless for 120, which is a lot harder to power up. Ideally you'd only be able to do it if you were playing like Melanie and the new like DCE that minimizes damage.
Yeah.
Which is not ideal, I think.
I think you could use Raihan too, depending. Like, there's ways you could do this in one turn, but yeah, your point is 100% valid, which is like, it's not easy. It requires like a little bit of work, and it's like, do I really want to put in work for this thing? Probably not.
Yeah, for doing 120 damage, and then you have to shuffle the Pokemon in your deck. You don't have the option like Eldegoss. You have to shuffle this into the deck.
Which I think shuffling it in, again, because it is a bench sitter that gives up 2 prizes, not terrible. But yeah, I think it does make it a lot less. I think people were comparing it to Jirachi EX, I think it was. So obviously, I think in a format I think the thing people compare it to when they say Jirachi or others, I don't know what the overlap period was with Tapu Lele and some of those other cards, but because there is nothing else in format, like we don't have Battle Compressor and Versus Seeker. Like those don't exist in this format right now. So because we don't have those things, whereas Jirachi EX probably did have other options that made Jirachi EX less playable, there's nothing that makes this less playable. So it's like, okay, well, I think a lot of people will just accept this. I think the problem with this card right now, though, is we have too much draw already. Like, you know, and this is going to lead us into the next section here really quick, which is, we'll talk a little bit about the meta, but like Mew V Max as an example, why would they ever play this card?
No, Mew V Max would never play this card, because why would you? I mean, there's no reason to get a supporter when you can just Genesect for 8,000 cards on your first turn of the game and only have 15 cards left in your deck.
Right.
You know?
You have Arceus as well, the new V-Star Arceus coming out that lets you go get 2 cards from your deck. I think it might end your turn, but I don't know. You get 2 cards out of your deck. So you do have some real competition in the form of the way that like Pokemon and decks are designed, where it's like it's probably very good in certain decks, but the actual power creep of draw power, just pure draw power, not like items or other things, is just out of control right now. So I don't know.
It's definitely not as good as Lele.
No.
That is just apparent, but it's pretty cool. I like it. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see what people try out with it as well. But there are some other cards that were revealed through this that are going to be from Starbirth and in Brilliant Star. You know, a lot of these being kind of like more GLC cards, I would say. Great, or Gym Leader Challenge format. I feel like every time we see card announcements now, like people that play the Gym Leader Challenge format, they're like salivating at the mouth. They're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be great. It's like everybody's forgetting standard and stuff at this point.
Yeah. I mean, fair enough on that, because you know, like we were saying about Mew V Max, if standard is all like 2 decks right now, you know, we in the Sword and Shield era, I think we are coming full circle now before V-Star comes out, which is when Sword and Shield started, there was 2 decks. There was Mill and ADPZ. And coming around full circle to the end of the current like Sword and Shield style era, before we go into like the brilliant the Diamond and Pearl card era, it's Mew V Max and Umbreon Urshifu. That's it. Maybe Jolteon, but that's basically it.
I mean, here's the point of the standard meta right now. If you want to win, you play Mew V Max. There's no reason to play any other deck. Mew V Max pretty much against the meta, I would say, like actual like tier 1, tier 2 decks, you know, not the rogue ones like the Moltres Hoopa deck or even Gengar, honestly. I mean, I don't know if Gengar's probably like a tier 3-ish. I mean, Duraludon had a spotlight for a little bit, but now people know about Duraludon, right? Grant Manley won with it, and then everybody talked about it, and now it's okay. But anyways, if you want to win, you play Mew V Max. There's no reason to play anything else. It has very good spread across the entire meta in terms of win percentage, you know, at least having like 50-50, even with its bad matchups, I would say, or bad. I mean, that's in quotations, but Sean, you kind of wanted to talk a little bit about Mew V Max and its dominance.
Yeah, I think the tag team Pokemon podcast crew, they talked about it in detail, and they have a lot of historical knowledge that Jake and I don't have because they've been playing a long time. So I would definitely, you know, plug for our pod friends out there. I listen to that, but and I also wanted to mention David on Twitter sent us a lovely message. It was a review. I'm not going to read it because it's not really like formatted in like a read out loud way, but he did also want us to talk about like these, you know, BDIF decks and like how it historically has been and like what could we do to, you know, people talked about banning Mew V Max or like how do you take it down a peg so it's not just so clearly the deck that you need to play to win. And I don't know. Overall, I'd say Mew V Max is probably one of the most dominant decks the game has ever seen. Jake and I talked briefly at the beginning about the comparison to ADPZ. And I think, it's a good comparison for us who've played it. Zoroark, if you've played a little bit longer than that, is another good comparison. The difference between Mew VMAX and primarily ADP, I'm going to say ADP decks, but ADPZ into like Zoro, is that ADPZ and Zoro, over time, there was a lot more things that you could do, especially Zoroark, right? Like, who did you pair Zoro with? And that was a meta call, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm pairing Zoro with, this or that card because I think that's going to make for the most interesting matchup spread. Whereas Mew VMAX is kind of, do you play Meloetta? Do you play, what is it? The Latios?
Nobody plays the Latios anymore.
Well, I mean, but you could have at the beginning, right? But there's very few. And like the question, do you play Raihan or do you play Eloisa Sparkle or do you play Battle VIP? But the decisions in that are pretty minor, I would argue. They're like, one card may clearly be better than the other, but generally speaking, you're changing just like 2 to 3 cards in a deck list. And like eventually everyone agrees, no, this is the best list. That's obviously a function of the fact that Fusion Strike has only been out for a short time. So I can't blame it too much, but it just feels like the Pokemon gave us a pre-packaged deck, which on a little platter with this set that said, hey guys, here are these cookies that I want you to bake. Here's the exact recipe for how to bake it. And if you decide to make anything else like brownies or bake, I don't know, a pie, it's just not going to be as good as these cookies. These cookies are just the best. So up to you. But if you don't like cookies, then you're kind of screwed. And that, I think, is the thing that feels the most oppressive for people about Mew VMAX. What do you think, Jake?
I think that, yes, Mew VMAX is very good and very oppressive, but I don't think it should be banned because if you've looked at the recent trend from the last year of the Pokemon trading card game, we have Rebel Clash comes out, Dragapult, best deck in format, very, very good, very, very dominant, holds a good meta share, and it just took out online tournaments and things like that. Then you come Darkness Ablaze, and right away a counter comes. Dark type Pokemon's printed. Dragapult goes out the window, becomes literally obsolete. Like nobody's playing Dragapult anymore. Eternatus is really good. Eternatus is really dominant. And then all of a sudden, Battle Styles comes out. Oh my gosh. Fighting Pokemon now become the huge meta. Eternatus out the window. Obsolete. Yep. Not played anymore. People don't play it. Then comes Chilling Rain. Shadow Rider is printed. Immediate counter to the Rapid Strike Urshifu, which was the previous BDIF, and then Shadow Rider becomes the BDIF. Now, Rapid Strike Urshifu has lasted a little bit longer.
Yeah.
It hasn't been absolutely thrown into being obsolete. Single Strike Urshifu took a little bit to get there because, well, Single Strike Urshifu wasn't necessarily great or like tier 1, I would say, to begin with. But point being, a counter came immediately after. And so we've seen this cycle of new BDIFs being printed and these new cards for archetypes being printed and then immediately countered in a sense. Now, I'm not going to say that exact thing has happened with Mew VMAX in terms of Mew VMAX is being printed, and now next set we're going to get a dark type Pokemon that immediately knocks it out of the park, and nobody's ever going to play Mew VMAX.
Darkrai V-Star?
I mean, I'm just saying that'd be a really cool card.
Future site prediction, Darkrai V-Star, right?
But with my point being is Pokemon is being much better about making sure there are counters as of late and printing those out. And when we talk about banning cards, you go back to Lysander's Trump card. Pokemon in the X and Y era from Phantom Forces a while ago that neither Sean and I played with. Let's just look at that card, for example, because that is one of the few cards that has been banned while it's in the standard format. And when you look at different cards that have been banned in the standard format, whether that's Lysander's trump card or even Belelba and Bryson Man, which unfairly, in my opinion, got banned at the very, very end but I digress. Those are being banned because in the play environment, it's doing several of these things. Eliminating opponents' victory conditions. So in terms of Lysander's trump card, it's running out of cards in your deck. You know, Mill is not a viable option anymore because, for anyone who does not know, Lysander's trump card is a supporter card. Each player shuffles all the cards in his or her discard pile into his or her deck, except for Lysander's trump card. So if you know, you got a 0-card deck and you're playing the Mill matchup or whatever, you play Lysander's trump card from your hand, all of those cards in your discard pile get shuffled back in. Now you got 45 cards in your deck. You're not going to deck out, and Lysander's trump cards in there. Even your Versus Seekers, right? Because this was printed, this was during the time that Versus Seeker was around.
So even if you mill the Lysander's trump, so long as you hold one Versus Seeker in your hand, you're like, well...
And you could even play multiple Lysander's trump card because this card was just insane. Yeah. And this not only allowed, like I was saying, you know, you could have multiple Lysander's trump cards in your deck. Even though that one is in the discard pile, you not only have options of Versus Seeker, but this allowed repeated use of those powerful trainer cards. And then others like N that was printed during X and Y, you know, a bunch of different supporters, Colress as well from the Plasma era. And it allows you to draw through your deck also quickly with minimal repercussions and extends the time of battle. So it was just such a dominant card that it allowed the game to not be played in the way that Pokemon wants to be played. Whereas in comparison, yes, Mew is very good. Yes, Mew is very dominant, but it's still played in the way that Pokemon wants to be played. Yeah. You know, it's not like Mew is playing through its card with using Genesect 8 times in a single turn and drawing 800 cards, and there's not repercussions behind that. There are definitely repercussions behind that, but it's all for a purpose, if that makes sense. Yeah. Even if Mew has a 40% share in these online tournaments or whatever, and it's winning a bunch, it's not like negating different play styles or making the game somewhat unfair. Dominance is not equal to unfair, and I don't think it'll last forever. I don't think Mew will be this dominant for its tenure. I mean, ADP wasn't really dominant until Zacian and Metal Saucer were printed, and then ADP became the top tier deck in the Sword and Shield format when people were like, all right, this is too much.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, if there's anything you could do with the deck, it seems like the problem that really drives the deck is that it draws so many cards that you rarely are missing anything. And I think if you were going to change anything, you might make the Genesect ability once per turn. And that would have to be an errata.
If you did once per turn, I think you would need Genesect to draw more cards.
Yeah, it would need to be. But I think that ultimately, I think Genesect is the root of the problem in it, because it allows you, like, you know, the tag team folks talked about this. It allows you to draw enough cards, turn one going second, to find an Eloise Sparkle and, you know, play it, plus the energy that you need, all that good stuff, do big damage with Meloetta, like
210 right away.
Right. And it's just like, when you're sitting here and you're just kind of like, how going first, if I can't play this, how am I supposed to do anything about that? Right. And the answer is you can't. And so that for me is like that's the main issue, because we talk about how much draw power and search, like Pokemon is one of the only games that I know of where you can look through half of your deck by drawing and also go and look for more than half of your deck directly through like search cards like Pokeball. Like almost no other games allow you to do all of that in one turn, right? So
yeah, and I mean, Sean is the card game guy now, you know, in Magic, doing Digimon content. You played Hearthstone, right?
I played some Hearthstone back in the day. I played some Keyforge. I play a lot of things. And so, like, I'm sure there are games that do allow this. I don't know about Yu-Gi-Oh! But people would, I think Yu-Gi-Oh! People would say it's a little degenerate too. So, but like when you have that kind of stuff, like the deck that sees more cards, card advantage wins games. That's a principle that is almost always true in any game. And that's, I think, ultimately what drives Mew's success is card advantage. You're just seeing more cards more quickly than your opponent. You have more choices that you can make. And so, like, if you were going to nerf Mew V Max, that I think would have to be the thing. Maybe, I mean, weirdly, do you ban Eloise's Sparkle? It sounds awful, but like attaching 2 special energies in for a single supporter, that's a lot. I don't think you do, but like, you got to find some way to slow it down. But I don't see it happening. I agree with you, Jake.
I think if Elisa Sparkle, so let's compare Elisa Sparkle to Belelba and Bryson Man, right? So Belelba and Bryson Man, or let's just start with Elisa Sparkle. Elisa Sparkle is played in only one meta deck at this point, and it's Mew V Max. Very fitting because you're playing fusion cards. Yeah. You only play Elisa Sparkle with Fusion Strike Pokemon, and with those Fusion Strike energy. Whereas in comparison, Belelba and Bryson Man in the Sword and Shield format, you could play it in ADP to counter Mill. You play it in Mill because, well, you're Mill, right? Oranguru Control. If you want to play Pidgeotto Oranguru Control, which was kind of a viable deck at that point, like Belelba and Bryson Man became a tech in some decks during its point, whether that was in the Cosmic Eclipse format, in the Sword and Shield format. Now, was it a good tech? I mean, not really, in my opinion, but it was still at that point where it could be played in a multitude of decks. So definitely, I don't think you should ban Elisa Sparkle. Again, I think Mew is not going to be dominant forever. And it's in this format. I feel like with V-Stars coming and stuff, it's going to definitely knock Mew down a little bit. It could still be a very good deck, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But I definitely think it's going to be knocked off the totem pole a bit. And to the people that are also saying, bring back the first turn supporter rule, try to imagine Mew going first and using... Like, try to imagine Mew V Max going first with a supporter on top of it. Like, think about what it can do without the supporter, and now think about it, what you could do. Elisa Sparkling twice in a single, like twice
by
before
turn
you
2
get to attack.
Yeah,
you can guarantee the 4 energies if you're in their deck. You could power up like 8 different Mews on the board, like with a Meloetta as well. It's just no.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The first turn supporter rule,
fix the problem.
It makes the problem. All it does is it shifts the winner from being the person going second who draws the nuts to the person going first who draws the nuts, and that's it. That's all it does.
And that should bring up the point too. Like, if you brought the first turn supporter rule back, think about the format right now where going first is pretty much essential to decks
because of evolution.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the VMAX format, and I think just generally going first gives you a better win percentage. I mean, I don't think it's like critical, like, oh God, I flipped tails, now I just lose. I might as well just scoop right now. Like, it's not the all win all, but I think like you have a pretty good shot. I feel like you have a much better shot of winning if you go first and you have like a relatively decent start. So like bringing the first turn supporter rule back, I mean, I think that just makes going first even more critical, and you're like, that would make going first imperative to winning. I feel like if the first turn supporter rule is back, going first, you would win pretty much every single time because you would just be so dominant.
No, I fully agree with that. So I think we have covered our thoughts on Mew V Max adequately. Like I said, tag team podcast, great other podcast. If you really want like in-depth analysis of Mew V Max.
Yeah, I mean, they played in formats that we didn't play in, so like they got to experience, the full of Zoroark. We got the tail end of Zoroark, but they got the full thing from the start to the finish, pairing it with Decidueye, pairing it with Trashalanche, like all of those different Buzzrock as well, like all those different things. And it's oh man, the Pokemon card game has been ups and downs, Sean. We talked about the de-evolution of the meta a couple weeks ago, and I still stand by that statement, and I think it was correct to make that title because I think we called it.
Yeah. Yes.
Although I don't think it was very hard to call.
It's pretty clear, right? It's like when you
Yeah.
see a meteor coming and you're like, that looks like a problem. And then guess what?
That
It was
looks
a
like
problem.
it might come over here, you know?
Right.
Like, but anyway, Sean, I will see you next week along with all of our wonderful listeners on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, whatever that may be. Make sure to add us pictures on Twitter at MetapodTCG of where you're listening to the Metapod podcast so we can talk about it. We can do all the things. And Sean wants to say something. That's why I like the video podcasts.
Good luck with your Christmas polls, everybody.
Yes, Christmas right around the corner. Happy holidays. I almost forgot. I still have to do Christmas shopping, Sean. And I'm taking a trip out of state as well. So, like, I have even less time than most people right now to do Christmas shopping.
So, yeah, happy holidays and Christmas and all that good stuff, everybody. Hopefully your polls are busted.
Use code Metapod at Manscaped for 20% off. Bye.